So the transfer window has now shut, but how did your club get on throughout January? Let's talk about it. Guys, welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're going to be ranking every championship club for how I think they did during the January transfer window. Today's a bit of a funny day really, because some clubs will continue to get some deals over the line when the paperwork was submitted in time. I'm sure we'll see a couple more deals go throughout today and stuff like that, but I'm very interested to get your guys' thoughts on this one. So as always, if you're going to enjoy, make sure to leave a like, do stick around and subscribe for some regular championship content. But without any further ado, let's jump into this one. So we'll go through the clubs in alphabetical order, starting out with Barnsley. They did get a few loan deals over the line. I quite liked Domingos Quina as a player. Never thought he got the chance at Fulham or Watford over the last couple of years in the championship. But have they done enough to avoid the drop? I'm not convinced. I'm going to say it's been a pretty poor window for Barnsley, all things considered. Let me know if you disagree with that. Birmingham's an interesting one. They have added a little bit more strength and depth, particularly in those forward positions of the pitch. Some pretty nice deals picked up on loan deals. Onel Hernandez, Lyle Taylor, Tendon Menji as well, who does come in and improve them a little bit at the back. But still looking a little bit light in some areas, albeit I'd say it's been a pretty solid window for Birmingham, all things considered. I do think, though, that heading into summer, that's when we'll really see a bit of a reshuffle of that Birmingham squad. Next up then for Blackburn, and as good as some of the deals that they have got over the line have been, probably the best bit of business that Blackburn have done in this window is keeping hold of Ben Brereton and, probably most surprisingly, keeping hold of Joe Rothwell as well. Hedges is a deal which I've quite liked. They've been after him for quite some time. Ryan Giles is a quality player coming in on loan as well. Honestly, all things considered, I think it's been a very good window for Blackburn, and they've given themselves every opportunity to be up there at the end of the season. Next up then we go to Blackpool, and this one's a bit of a funny one really, because they have picked up some decent deals. Beasley comes in, maybe a bit more of a long-term option going forward, coming in from Rochdale. Dale comes in. Charlie Kirk's an interesting one as well. They picked him up on the loan deal with the view to make that permanent at the end of the season, but they didn't get that central midfielder over the line in the end. Had they got Brannigan in, that probably would have gone solid, maybe even very good window for them. But as things stand, I think it's been an alright window for Blackpool. So around about that meh, between meh and solid for me in terms of their incomings. Bournemouth, I don't think anyone's going to be in any doubt where they're going in this video. On deadline day, the deals they pulled off and the quality of deals they pulled off were absolutely ridiculous. Kiefer Moore, Sariki Dembele, Freddie Woodman, Nat Phillips and Todd Cantwell. Honestly, there's no excuses for Bournemouth from here on in not to be making it into the top two. They go straight up there into amazing window. Strength and depth has been added. Yeah, nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Bristol City had quite a quiet transfer window really. Tim Close comes in. I saw him make his debut against Preston the other week at Deepdale. Bakinson goes out on a loan deal. Bit of a meh one for Bristol City. Not too much of a reshuffle going on in the squad with that one. After that for Cardiff, and I'm between a few categories for them really, because at the start of the window they lost Giles, they then lost Kiefer Moore for around about that 3 million mark. However, they have done a decent job, albeit in the short term with these loan deals, of going ahead and replacing those players, and they should have enough here for me to avoid the drop. Ikpeazu comes in, Hugill as well as another option going forward. Tommy Doyle I quite like, got a bit of quality coming in from Man City. I think it's been fairly solid, albeit, you know, losing Kiefer Moore was always going to be a bit of a miss. I think that similar to Birmingham, a reshuffle of that squad is definitely coming in the summer transfer window that maybe we didn't see this time. Coventry, pretty quiet window, all things considered. They kept hold of key players, which is the big thing for them. Jake Bidwell coming in, he has a wealth of championship experience, albeit didn't add all too much else. I'm going to say meh for Coventry. I think once again between meh and solid, pretty quiet window for them compared to a few of the other championship clubs on today's video. Derby are a really tough one to place because they have lost the likes of Shinnie and Jagielka. Jagielka especially, who was a key player for them. Planger's gone on as well, but they've managed to bring him back on loan for the rest of the season. But with the context of how bad this window could have actually been for Derby, I think they've managed to sort of salvage it with the players they've actually managed to keep hold of, you know, keeping hold of Tom Lawrence, the youngsters who, you know, several championship clubs were circling them like vultures. things could have been a lot worse for Derby. Compared to everyone else, you'd probably say poor window because they are weaker, having lost Jagielka and Shinnie. But because things could have been a lot worse for them, I'm going to put them into meh. You know, keeping hold of some of those other players, they've got every chance of surviving from here on out, in my opinion. Fulham, pretty quiet window, all things considered. Nico Williams comes in on the loan deal. Dennis Adoy going out on loan. No deal in the end put in place for Fabio Carvalho as well. For Fulham, I'm going to say meh, pretty quiet window for them. Their squad was already ridiculously strong and it still is coming out the end of January as well. Next then for Huddersfield, I'd say they've had a pretty solid transfer window. Blackman comes in as sort of a backup option. Eiting, who was pretty good there in his previous loan spell with them, comes in on a free transfer. And the success of this window probably all falls on how good Tino Anjorin is. Because he's the real difference maker coming into this side as a bit more of a creative spark. For the time being, I'm going to put Huddersfield in solid, but if he goes on and smashes it, you probably bump them up into very good window. Next then for Hull City, who I think have absolutely smashed this transfer window. If we look at Hull's squad coming into January and what it's like at the end of it, I think it's night and day. Probably the best bit of business that they've got done as well is picking up Ryan Longman on a permanent basis. I think that's incredible business right there. I would have thought that several, top championship clubs would have been interested in him with how well he's done for them recently. But Regan Slater coming in as well, then Liam Walsh and Marcus Forss on a loan deal. Marcus Forss, a serious upgrade on Josh McGuinness. Honestly, I think it's been an amazing window for Hull. The new takeover there, everyone just seems to be in a bit more of a buoyant mood. And yeah, I'm going to say amazing window there for Hull City. Really good stuff from them. Luton, pretty quiet on the transfer front. They brought in Jed Steer to replace Simon Sluga, who's departing. Bit of a shame, really. I always had a bit of a soft spot for Sluga, with him getting off to a bit of a tough start in his Luton career. Slowly started to pick things up, but he's departed along with Glenn Rea on a loan deal. For Luton, I'm going to say meh, pretty quiet overall in terms of the incomings and outgoings. Middlesbrough's an interesting one because they were linked to a whole host of players on deadline day, but none of those deals eventually materialising, which maybe bumps them down a tier or two. I do like the additions they've made, and I certainly think that in the final third, they are significantly stronger now than they were going into January. Balogun and Connolly coming in, and then Riley McGree as another option in midfield. I'm going to say it's still been a very good window for Middlesbrough. They've brought in some serious quality on those loan deals, and yeah, Riley McGree I think is also an upgrade in those midfield positions as well. For Millwall, I'm not sure, because on one hand they've kept hold of Jed Wallace, where it looked pretty unlikely that they would at one point, albeit he's still probably going to leave at the end of the season. They've then lost the likes of Ben Thompson and Matt Smith. They brought in Ollie Burke. But for me, I thought that Millwall would have been a little bit more active on deadline day. I'm not going to lie, I think it's been a pretty poor window, all things considered, for Millwall. Maybe the fact that they kept hold of Jed Wallace bumps them up to meh. But overall, yeah, I think it's been a pretty poor window for Millwall, especially compared to some of those other clubs that we've previously spoken about. Nottingham Forest are an interesting one, probably the major outgoing being João Carvalho. A little bit of me is sad to see him go because he was so good at the start at Forest, but isn't really a great fit into this current system, and it's probably best for everyone that he's gone ahead and moved on. On deadline day, they got a deal done for Sam Surridge, with Lewis Grabban recently picking up that injury. They were in need of a little bit more cover in that position. He comes in alongside Keenan Davis, and they've also added to their options at the back, Steve Cook especially coming in as a real experienced member of that back line. Forest, I'm going to say it's been a very good window. I think they, along with Middlesbrough, have given themselves every chance of reaching the top six with the deals they've done in this January. For Peterborough, this is an interesting one because they have done quite a bit of business here. Several loan deals being completed throughout the month, but the big departure was Sariki Dembele. Now, things could have been worse. They had other players who were being linked away on deadline day, but the major departure was Dembele. For my money, he was their best player in terms of getting them up the pitch, having that goal threat. And for losing him, I'm not sure. I'm going to have to say poor window, I think. I do like a couple of the loan deals that they've got over the line, but I think they're weaker without Dembele in the final third, but time will tell on that one. Next then for Preston North End. Pretty quiet transfer window, all things considered. Several players going out on loan who we weren't really in much need of. Bambo Diaby comes in as another option at the back, and probably, you know, the best bit of business that we've done is Cameron Archer coming in from Aston Villa. Already in his 2 appearances, I think that North End fans realise what a quality player he is, and we were in need of quite a bit more in those positions. A left wing back would have been brilliant for us, but all things considered, I think it's been a fairly solid window for us, and between these two really for Preston, I'll say solid because I really think that Cameron Archer will make the difference for us in the final third for the rest of the season. In terms of QPR, a pretty solid window all things considered for them. They didn't get a deal done in the end for Jamie Patterson. They put in quite a few bids for him, but nothing materialised on that front. Maybe could have done with a little bit more in the final third, but especially in terms of strengthening that goalkeeper department, albeit, you know, Dieng probably comes back into the side when he gets back, but David Marshall a solid backup option. Dion Sanderson, really a good player. He showed that from his time at Birmingham, and Jeff Hendrick coming in on deadline day as well, with no major departures in there. For QPR, I'd say it's been a fairly solid window for them. I think they, alongside some of the other clubs around them, have given themselves every chance of, you know, a real solid end to the season. After that, and then for Reading, this is a tough one. Because on one hand, they've shifted a few wages which were probably necessary, got a few players out of that dressing room who probably, you know, weren't needed there, you know, looking at Liam Moore and probably George Puskas there, Raphael, who was probably one of their bigger earners, also going out. Andy Carroll is the one where I think that Reading fans will be a little bit gutted to have lost, because even though he wasn't necessarily prolific from his time there, he certainly had an impact in the final third, but maybe now with João coming in, there was less of a need for Andy Carroll. But the one position they really needed to strengthen was their defence, and they've not gone ahead and done that with how many goals they've shipped. For the time being, I'm going to put them into meh, but end of the video I might move them down. Then for Sheffield United, Adam Davis coming in probably as a more backup goalkeeper, and Charlie Goode as well, also coming in on a loan deal from Brentford. Quite like Charlie Goode as an option. Are they much stronger than they were before? Not ridiculously, but Goode especially adds another option for them at the back. I'm probably going to put them into the sort of between men solid for Sheffield United. Stoke City next up. Now, heading into the January transfer window, it seemed like Stoke wouldn't really have much muscle to get any deals done. That was certainly how Michael O'Neill was speaking at the start of the transfer window, but come deadline day, it's been quite the opposite of that really. There's been quite a reshuffling of this squad. They have lost a little bit in terms of, you know, Ostergaard going out. I quite liked Ostergaard in the early days, but I think that him being recalled was always on the cards really. Davis going out, Doherty going out on loan deal, Danny Bath. Sam Surridge was just a bit of a weird transfer really. They spent quite a bit of money on him in the summer, but it was evident quite early on that he wasn't a great stylistic fit into this Stoke side. But in terms of the players that they've actually brought in, I think they have added quality in this window. Jagielka, Lewis Baker, who we've already seen him have quite the impact on this Stoke squad, a bit more quality in midfield. And probably the biggest upgrade they've made is Josh Madger coming in for Sam Surridge. They were in need of a little bit more in the final third. And I do think that with these deals, they've given themselves every chance to fight back for that place in the top six. You know, players starting to come back from injury. You know, we're seeing Nick Powell back in the squad and things like that now. I think it's been a very good window for Stoke, all things considered. I think that with how things could have unfolded for them, I think this has been a pretty good window for them. Stoke fans, let me know what you think of that in the comments down below. Next then for Swansea City, tough one to put your finger on here, because with some of the departures that they've had in this window, they are left looking a little bit light for me in some positions. Albeit, I don't think it's been a complete disaster of a window, and they have brought in a little bit of quality here and there. You know, Cyrus Christie will do his best to sort of offset the loss of Ethan Laird, who was fantastic for them. Bidwell's departure did come as a little bit of a surprise to me, but, you know, they did dip into the market to go ahead and try and replace him as well. Wolf is probably the big one here in terms of how he gets on for the rest of the season. Burns coming in from Man City as well. I'm going to put Swansea in the meh category. I don't think it's been a disaster of a window for them, but they are left looking a little bit light in some positions. Finishing off today's video then with West Brom, who have had quite the straightforward transfer window really. We came into this one saying, okay, West Brom, what do they need? They need a striker. They've gone ahead and got that. and then he picked up an injury which is going to keep him out for the next month or so. Daryl Dike, I want to say the most expensive transfer that we saw in January, spending almost £8 million on him. You know, if he didn't pick up that injury, I'm sure would have had, you know, quite the instant impact for West Brom. They've tried to offset that loss by bringing in Andy Carroll, who's sort of, I suppose, a like-for-like replacement to someone like Jordan Hugill. Overall for West Brom, I think it's been a pretty good transfer window. That signing of Daryl Dike, while he won't have an impact straight away because of the injury, in years to come will be a very good player for them. But their current situation with the manager and style of play may still be holding them back, and maybe they could have done with a few other positions as well. You know, maybe another creative midfielder especially definitely wouldn't have gone amiss. But there we have it though. Those are my rankings for how I've sort of seen this January transfer window. There are a couple that maybe I'd shuffle around. I think I could easily throw maybe Reading into that poor window category because they've not reinforced that back line that's been so leaky throughout the season. Maybe a couple of other moves that I could make. Potentially moving up Millwall if they got a deal done for Luke Freeman. We'll see today if that loan deal actually got over the line. I think that would be a fantastic addition for Millwall, but if not, I'd probably leave Millwall in the poor window category. Maybe an argument for moving Blackpool up for keeping hold of Josh Bowler, even with, you know, several of the bids that came in for him at the end of the day. But to be honest, I'm quite interchangeable between a lot of these categories really, but I think I'm pretty happy with what I've got there. You guys will have to let me know in the comments down below. Do you agree, disagree with any of my selections there? Let me know how you think your club got on throughout January. For me, the best January transfer window probably has to go to Bournemouth. Probably one of the worst for the situation they're in. We're probably looking at Barnsley and Peterborough. But guys, there we have it. That will now wrap it up for today's video. So if you did go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like and do get your thoughts and comments down below. Apart from that, guys, thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll see you all in the next one.